Welcome, everyone, to the 30-minute Midas touch from beautiful Dyersburg, Tennessee at the Herb Welsh WrestlePlex. Now, here is, pound for pound and inch for inch, the best of the best in professional wrestling today. A wrestling genius worth his weight in gold. The Golden Boy, Greg Anthony.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the 30-minute Midas touch. I am your host, the Golden Boy, Greg Anthony, and with me, as always, is my co-host, the birthday boy, Mark Tipton.
Oh, the birthday boy. Well, I suppose this is Mark Tipton's birthday, so to speak, and do appreciate you acknowledging that. That threw me off a little bit. I was looking for something a little more related to the subject matter of this week, and so you kind of
curveball.
Curveball there. I wasn't quite ready for that. And this is a subject where, once again, we're approaching something that some may find controversial. We've, in previous editions of the 30-Minute Midas Touch podcast, we've discussed politics and religion and all the other things you don't necessarily discuss in polite conversation. But this is a subject that could be seen as controversial. And we will get to that. And basically what we want to talk about this week is, I know there was a plan for and I don't know if it's actually happened yet, an all-women's pay-per-view. I know Mickie James was heavily involved with that, and there was some discussion about that. And so the subject matter for this week's edition is the role of women in professional wrestling.
Yes, and to say this is going to be controversial is kind of an understatement, but I want to remind everybody right off the bat, this is the 30-minute Midas touch. This is the Golden Boy Greg Anthony show, and it is about my opinion and my experience in professional wrestling, and that's where I'm going to come from on this. If people don't like it, that's fine. You don't have to listen. You don't have to agree with me or anything like that. But this is my personal opinion of the things that go on in professional wrestling. And women in professional wrestling, you know, there's a lot to talk about.
All right. I suppose the first thing we need to kind of say is the controversy that arises, and in recent years we've all heard about the women's revolution or evolution, and we saw the WWE pay-per-view, all women's pay-per-view, and a greater emphasis on the kind of importance of women's roles in professional wrestling. Now, women have always had a role in professional wrestling, and we'll discuss several men held roles that I consider to be very important to the history of pro wrestling. And we'll discuss that during the course of this. But I guess the first thing is, in general, how do you view women and their role in professional wrestling?
Well, and like I said, I'm coming from 21 years experience as a wrestler, as a booker, as a promoter, as a historian, a columnist, you know, this whole thing. So for me, like, one thing that bothers me is today, a young female has more of a chance to make a living in professional wrestling than any man could possibly. Because, and I've seen it several times, girls have been wrestling 2-3 years, and they're making a living in professional wrestling, which is completely unheard of on the male side. And it basically comes down to because they're pretty, and guys want to to be vulgar, you know, because they think they have an opportunity to fuck them. You know what I mean? So that's part of the thing. I think if a woman that had been wrestling 2 or 3 years and you contact them and they're like, well, I need X amount of dollars to come in, or I need this and I need that. If that would have been a guy, in most cases, promoters go, no, you're still green. You still need to learn. You need to, you're still wet behind the ears. You need to pay your dues more and shit like that. But because it's women, it becomes less than that. You understand? We give them a pass for some reason. And I'm not saying this about all women. You understand? There's been plenty of women that busted ass and paid their dues and did what they were supposed to do. But for the majority, that's what I'm saying. It's like, and I don't necessarily fault them either. They're just trying to make a living like everyone else. But I do have a problem when they exploit that in a non-wrestling way. Jordan Grace, for instance, Jordan Grace worked for us when she was young, in her teens, and she's obviously a big name in women's wrestling now with Impact and things like that. But she would get on there. She was on my Facebook, and she would get on there one week, and she would talk about how she wanted to be taken seriously as a professional wrestler, and we're just athletes, and we're this kind of stuff, and blah, blah, blah. And then the very next week, she's telling everybody, well, I sold pictures of my armpits for $300. That's rent money, guys. So, see what I'm saying? Like, it really, to me, it becomes, we start getting into the more, not professional wrestling, but more like fetish kind of stuff, and that's where I absolutely do not want professional wrestling to go.
Oh, I could have gone without knowing that. I did not know those details. I'm not a creature of the social media. I tend to view it in a negative light and keep a safe distance because of things like you're describing.
Right.
Those are things I'd rather not know. I do want to come at this, and as I heard you describe, kind of your viewpoint, one of the things I thought is your criticism may not be directed as much at the women themselves as it is the way the business looks at women. Is that fair?
Well, I mean, it's just human nature. And that's what people don't understand. Like, guys want to get with girls. Guys like pretty girls. Like, you put, sex draws. You know what I mean? That's the phrase.
That's
right?
I've always heard sex sells.
Sex sells. There you go. Either way, same difference. But that's kind of the thing, and that's going to be the case. And people that don't think that that's the case are just blind to the reality. You understand? I completely understand that that's the reality of life. That women, pretty, booby, leggy, blonde hair, blue eye, whatever it may be, they're going to get better opportunities, especially in our business. Like I said, this isn't, there's a lot of talented women out there. And I'm not saying that every man is better than every woman in wrestling. That's not what I'm saying. Obviously, there's women that I said are amazing athletes and can do a lot of things. I personally think, on average, though, if you took the average male wrestler and took the average female wrestler, then the male wrestler is going to beat her every time. You understand? Like, as far as talent goes.
Sure.
And that's kind of the problem we've seen with the women's revolution is that everybody thinks that they're Charlotte, or everybody thinks they're Sasha, or everybody thinks they're Bayley, right? And, like, there's very few women that are in that category.
Certainly.
But everybody thinks they are, so they want to go out there and they want to have the WrestleMania main event matches, go 20, 30 minutes when they don't have the skill set to do that yet. But because they're pretty, and we don't want to tell them no, and we want to keep them happy, they let them do whatever they want. And to me, it diminishes professional wrestling, and it diminishes the women's role itself.
All right. Well, there you got into a viewpoint, and I'll try to mix two things here. That you kind of mentioned what I was getting at about the way the business views them. Sometimes the lack of perspective that you're describing may be because there's no one around. You mentioned no one wants to tell them that, and so it doesn't necessarily shock me that they have a skewed view of themselves and where they rank as far as their development as a professional wrestler because no one is telling them so. And I want to get at one of the reasons why that may be, and say what you think about this. You mentioned how someone who is young in their wrestling career would get advantages that a male wrestler in the same position wouldn't. Could I argue that the reason for that is simple scarcity? The amount of women who are involved in professional wrestling as a proportion compared to the amount of men who pursue professional wrestling as a career is relatively small. And so when you get a female who is interested, she's going to be in greater demand just because of supply.
Yeah, I completely understand that perspective too. It's, but once again, like I said, it's not their fault. I mean, like, me and Bobby Eaton used to have this conversation because, of course, I'm a historian. I would talk about this guy and that guy, and he would go, well, I mean, what is he supposed to do? Tell him no? You know what I mean? Like, they're trying to give him all this opportunity. I mean, he may not be ready for it, but what's he supposed to say? Like, no, thank you. I don't want to make $100,000 this year. See what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
So I'm not, like I said, I'm not necessarily blaming women for it. It's just that I don't like the way, that people bow down and just give them breaks for no reason, for no talent reason. You understand? Like, I understand, like, Shawn Michaels, we talked about in the past, was one of the most difficult guys to work with.
Yes.
You know what I mean? He was very volatile and, just a hard person to be around, they said. But he was also one of the greatest in-ring performers in the history of professional wrestling. So with professional wrestling, it becomes a give or take kind of thing, right? So for me, it's like, if I got to deal with an attitude or this or that, same thing, you need to be good. You know what I mean? Because if you're not, you have no worth to me. You know what I mean? And I just see a lot of placating going around.
All right. Well, to kind of get on this subject, and I'll try to come at it from my perspective as what I hear you describing. Really, if I thought about it, if I wanted to criticize the role of women in professional wrestling, the first thing I'm going to look at is what's commonly known as the Divas era. With the Divas, we saw a portrayal of women in professional wrestling. It was the Attitude Era that really, brought this into being. It was highly sexualized and salacious, or however you want to put it. And the in-ring wrestling was laughable, to be frank. Would that be fair for me to say?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, the Divas era, with obviously, a few exceptions, Jazz being one.
Absolutely.
Jazz is one of the best women's wrestlers of all time, but also, she was just as good as many, many men. You know what I mean? And that's what I'm saying. She's the exception to the rule, not the rule. You understand? I think Trish did well, obviously. I think Lita did well, obviously. Were they perfect? No. But, I mean, they filled those roles to the best of their ability. And, of course, then we had women that weren't very good, like Eve Torres, for instance. I mean, she never really connected with me. As much as I like Tori Wilson, she wasn't great in the ring. Neither was Dawn Marie or any of those girls like that. They were simply there for eye candy, and that's kind of what that's what they were there for. And like I said, they made a great living doing it. So I can't fault them for that. But it just, like I said, yeah, I mean, the role in women has changed dramatically since Sherry Martel.
Okay, you stole my thunder there. That's the name I was waiting to get to. She was going to be my counter to any criticism you want to have.
Yeah, I mean, I love Sherry Martel. I think Sherry Martel is the greatest women's wrestler of all time. I think she's the greatest female personality in professional wrestling of all time. And I think she's top 5 in managers of all time. I'm a huge fan of Sherry Martel. And it's not... Of course, she was, versus Rockin' Robin in the mid-'80s or whatever it may be. Yeah, she was a great wrestler then, too. But it was just the way she was able to adapt herself to any role that they needed. You understand? And actually, I heard the story that when they actually put her with Shawn Michaels originally, that Shawn Michaels really wasn't into it. He's like, I don't really feel like I need a valet, that kind of thing. And then he kind of thought about it for a second. And he's like, well, she's a top guy because she only works with Savage and DiBiase and, that kind of realm. Right? So it automatically bumped Shawn up in people's eyes that Sherry was with him.
Right.
You know what I mean? So, and that's what I think a lot of women don't understand nowadays is they want to be the in-ring whatever. They want to be this, but I really feel a lot of them could be a lot better used in a Sherry Martel-esque role. Even Melina,
right.
Terry Runnels, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, well,
yeah, Terry Runnels.
Let's say Terry Runnels, if that's who you're referring to, because there was Melina, who was a Divas champion.
Yeah, but she wasn't very good. But she was still her biggest thing was valeting.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And yes, there were some bra and panties matches and things like
Well,
that.
there you get in. One of the things that I thought did a great disservice to the women's division, there were the bra and panties, the evening gowns, the pillow fights. Um, there was, I think that there was some mud wrestling mixed in there of some sort, and,
Always, yeah.
and all those sorts of things just diminished it. And I was one of those people, in full disclosure, that often came to view the Divas matches as a bathroom break
Yeah.
when I would attend events. And and I understand it's really a rude to the performer to refer to it that way, but that's the way I viewed it. When I would attend events and I saw this come, I said, "Oh, here's my break."
Yeah. In wrestling, it's called the popcorn match, which means that the guys are going to go get their popcorn during that match. So yeah, it wasn't necessarily that wasn't their fault either. I mean, they give them 3-4 minutes for a title match in between the two big main events of a pay-per-view, just to kind of buffer them in between. It was literally the worst spot you could be in on a card.
And if one match happened to run long early in the show, where are they going to take
Yeah.
minutes from?
Yeah.
That's going to be it.
Yeah.
I did like that, and I mentioned Sherry Martel in one of our previous episodes, my admiration for her. And I guess what it is because, for lack of a better term, she got professional wrestling. She clearly understood what she was doing. She knew her role, and whatever that role was, whether it was in ring or at ringside, and she always embraced it with energy and gave you everything she had.
And added to everybody. Like, and think about that just for a moment. You have the Macho King, Randy Savage, and she added to that gimmick, right? The Macho Man, one of the greatest gimmicks of all time, or one of the greatest, personalities of all time, and she added to it. Same thing with the $1 Million Man. She added to that. And then the beginning of the Shawn Michaels thing with the Heartbreak Kid, I mean, that all really centered around her and him, and how the chemistry was to make that work. So, yeah, we can't say enough great things about Sherry Martel. That's actually one of my biggest regrets in wrestling. Is I was booked on one show with her, and she wasn't able to make it, and then she died like a couple months later.
Okay.
And that always broke my heart, because I was like, oh, I was such a fan. I really wanted to, at least get some kind of memory with her. But,
well, one other name that sprang up that's a very different persona, I would say, than Sherry, that I felt played a key role in professional wrestling history, and I want to see how you feel about this, and that was Miss Elizabeth.
yeah, and that's another, not a wrestler.
No.
You know what I mean? Just a straight valet. And wasn't really physically involved until later, when she was heel with the NWO stuff.
And that really seemed
out of
seem
place.
to fit her. Yes,
Yeah.
that was not the way I viewed her
But
as a member of the audience.
she was this gorgeous, beautiful woman that was in the corner, and you felt sorry for her because Macho Man mistreated her. And it was just like, I'm sure you've been there before too. You're the good guy in high school, and the girl you like is with this dickhead. And if I could just free her from that evil tyrant, that kind of thing. I think we've all been in that situation before, and that was the appeal of Miss Elizabeth. She was just this wholesome young, girl that, wow, genuine. That's a very good word. Yeah, genuine. She was very genuine about that, and she just came across really like sweet and innocent, and that kind of thing.
Yeah, and she did things very differently than Sherry. She was very influential. She did not speak a lot. But, for instance, I recall her, I believe it was WrestleMania 4, when she leads Hogan down to the ring during Savage's matches, leading up to the championship and so forth. And she didn't say a lot, but her role in that was very key. And to me, that WrestleMania was one, I really enjoyed that one. And that story that they told that actually went all the way to WrestleMania 5, if you want to get down to it. And so I thought that was a case of a woman finding a role and then feeling it and doing a great job with it, although not in ring.
Absolutely.
All right. I suppose one of the things I like to talk about is, how my view of women's wrestling kind of changed just as a viewer. Because we had gone through the Divas era and so forth, and when the WWE network started, And to me, the viewpoint from management changed around this time period. The first day that the WWE network started, they had an NXT pay-per-view, and they had a match between Paige and Emma, and it was a match that I had not seen women have to my recollection, and it really and said, "Oh wait, this is something I can work with." Do you feel that the in-ring product has improved greatly because of matches like this and the emphasis on women's wrestling?
Well, I don't. I think there's everybody, men, women, everybody are doing way too much. You understand? Like, if you've ever been kicked in the face before, you know that it's impossible to kick someone in the face 40 times and them not be knocked out or bloody or something like that. And that's, we see so many strikes and so many this, and everyone wants to talk about how they're the knockout this and the knockout that, but like they never knock anyone out, so what does it matter? They hit them with their best shots as many times as possible. And that carries over into women's wrestling. To me, like, I never really wanted women's wrestling to try to emulate men's wrestling. Like, for me, I wanted it to be its own specific thing, as far as there's certain things that women can do in matches that we can't get away with. You understand? Like, I know it's passe, and a lot of people think, oh, he's a misogynist or whatever it is, but when you beal someone by their hair, you know what I mean? Like, that's a very female thing. You understand? Because women are so, I don't know how to put this, women are tied to their hair. You know what I mean? Oh, she's got nice hair.
Sure.
Yeah, you understand? Like, it becomes like a focal point of who they are. So when another woman, and that's kind of if you've ever seen a real fight between women, like an actual cat fight, they do go for the hair.
Right.
So that's part of the psychology of it too. And also the spot where they step on the girl's hair, but then they pull up her arm.
Sure.
So she's, they're trying to pull her hair out by the roots. And
Exactly.
And then another thing that women do really well is that they're very flexible. You understand? So, like, they can put themselves in submission holds that would be completely impossible or very, very uncomfortable for male athletes, right? So, to me, like, I feel like wrestling's a niche thing anyway, like we've talked about before, but it's the biggest niche. You understand? Like, we're not movies, we're not music, we're not NFL, NBA, things like that. But we've also, professional wrestling sells out Madison Square Garden, right? So it's the biggest niche. It's not something where, so to me, they need to find more of what worked for them and make that thing. Because, like you said, very few women in the business, ergo there's going to be fewer matches, ergo it becomes more of a specialty. You understand? Like, and people are going to get hot about this too, but like a midgets match. You understand? It has the same speciality. You don't see that you shouldn't see that all card. You understand? You shouldn't see 7 match. There'd be one midget match and there'd be one girls match, right? So those matches, why would you have either of those matches wrestle just like men when we've got 5 other matches like that? So they need to find their own way. You understand? So that's my thought process.
Okay. Well, I appreciate that, and you kind of you stunned me on that one because I have a very different viewpoint, and so I'm going to rethink things, because I will admit, if there was one thing I could eliminate from women's matches, it was going to be what I refer to as the hair hip toss. Right. To me, it is so. It is a large part of women's matches, and I've seen it forever, but it just. It does not appeal to me whatsoever.
But it creates a reaction.
Oh, certainly.
And that's my point. Like, another woman grabbing another woman by the head of the hair and slinging her across the ring, it gets a reaction. And women go, oh, because they've had their hair pulled like that before, stuff like that. So it's react. Like we always talk about too, like the 2 most important things in professional wrestling are getting hit in the face and kicked in the dick, because everyone's been hit in the face or kicked in the dick at some point in their lives, and they know what that feels like. So when it happens, they react to it, they register, they feel it, So same thing with this hair thing. Everyone's had their hair pulled by somebody, a sister, or fucking whoever, you know what I mean? So they relate to that.
All right. Well, and kind of going along that same thing, one of the things I've always felt with, as a member of the audience, I appreciated when you described it as having a match like men's matches. Ultimately, that's the type of entertainment I like. And so when I saw them, what I call, look like they were having a match, when I went through the Divas era and I saw the ridiculous matches they have, that it wasn't wrestling. It wasn't anything. And ultimately, I'm a pro wrestling fan. Right. Now, do I expect them to do everything that the men do? No, absolutely not. And I understand that going in. But to see them, when I see that they understand and appreciate professional wrestling and are doing their best, even if they can't do all the things that some of the men do. When you talk about, now, if you want to talk about physically, like the gymnastic aspects of, say, AJ Styles or Ricochet or, guys like that, I don't necessarily expect them to do those sorts of things. There are very few men that can do those sorts of things. But when I see them actually having a match and I see a competitive, well put together match, I appreciate that as a member of the audience. And so that's a very different perspective from what you're describing.
Yeah, I mean, and like I said, there's been plenty of matches, like actually, Sasha versus Bayley from NXT TakeOver a couple years ago.
Thank you.
That was
You're talking about Brooklyn.
Yeah, Brooklyn.
Yes.
I mean, that was an amazing match.
They scared me to death.
Yeah. The
reverse Hurricane Rana's off the top rope.
Yeah, that was scary.
Yeah. Please don't do that again.
Please don't do that again. Yeah. But I mean, like, that was a great match. But like, that's what I'm saying. We had that one out of how many are televised. You understand? And like, to me, most of them missed the mark, but they fill a role. They fill that women's need in professional wrestling, so people kind of overlook it. Same thing with the main event at WrestleMania. When we had Ronda Rousey and Becky Lynch and Charlotte, was that right?
Yes.
In the main event at WrestleMania. First of all, I want to say that I sat 5 years before this and said there will never be a women's main event in WrestleMania. I said it won't happen ever. I was wrong.
Yes.
And they did it.
Yes.
But here's the thing. They did it. It wasn't a good match. They fucked up the finish.
Yes.
And yet everyone still praised them afterwards. You understand? And to me, that's indicative of what I'm talking about. Because if that would have been a guy that fucked up the finish at WrestleMania, then his water would have got shut off. And he never would have got another push again. You know what I mean? But for some reason, this was a paradigm-shifting main event. Oh, it's so historic. You know what I mean? We can't actually criticize them, because if we criticize them, then guess what? We're misogynists. No, it's not that. It's just that like I said before, I've never. Same thing with race. I've never not booked somebody because they were black, and I've never booked someone just because they were black. Right? I've never. It should always be about the wrestling at the end of the day. I don't look at a black wrestler or a white wrestler or a female wrestler. They need to be wrestlers, right? And like, if we're going to hold people to standards, then it needs to be standards for everybody, So like, to me, like, things like that bother me.
All right. Well, getting on that WrestleMania main event, this is another potential source of disagreement between us, because I was a big supporter of Becky Lynch, and let me be fair. I have mentioned before that I'm a fan of Jim Ross, but not necessarily good old JR. I will tell you that I am and remain a big fan of Becky Lynch, but not necessarily a big fan of the man. You want to give me your impressions? Obviously, she was the winner of that main event,
yeah.
So she's.
So, and this is how the business goes too. So, Becky Lynch is kind of toiling away in wrestling. She's not getting over, and to me, it's because she's playing wrestler. She doesn't look believable. When she cuts a promo, it sounds like she's got marbles in her mouth. You can't understand her. She has all these issues going on. So in the midst of all this, Nia Jax busts her in the face and bloodies her. And like a good wrestler,
right?
You're
about to make my point.
Yeah, like a good wrestler, she didn't shy away from it, or she owned it and had the blood all over her face and
finished the segment.
And put it over. That was the good part. Now here's the bad part. That blew up, right? That moment blew up. Okay, so First of all, what does it say about our business that we're so shocked when someone gets punched in the face? You understand? That's the whole basis of our business, right? So the fact that she got hit in the face and everyone lost their shit, like, oh my God, did you see that? She got hit in the face and she's bloody. Well, no shit. It's professional wrestling. You should be believing this shit anyway. If you guys made the effort to make it believable to begin with, we wouldn't be in this situation. So, with that being said, she was created by that. You understand? I think that one moment, and she rode that son of a bitch like lightning. You know what I mean? Because I think that was the only thing that really got her over. Because to me, too, and women out here can correct me if they're wrong, but to me, it was almost misogynistic on her part to call herself the man. Which I understand that the man in historical wrestling terms is...
It's a Ric Flair reference.
It's a Ric Flair reference, but also being the greatest. You know, I'm the man. You know what I mean? When
Right.
Flair said it, he was the man. Triple H said it, he was the man. HBK, you know, so on and forth. So she was saying, well, I'm the man now. Like, all these other guys are nothing. I'm the man. I understand that perspective of it. But at the same time, like, why would you want to be the man? You're the woman. Right? Well, isn't that the whole thing of empowering women, like, you know, and being themselves and for who they are and what they are? But instead, we're going to push her as, quote unquote, the man. It just seemed really, it didn't make, to me, it didn't make sense.
No, well, I mentioned I wasn't a fan of the man persona, so to speak. And to me, it's because I don't think the WWE understood why the audience got behind her. I don't think they understood her very well. And our reaction, I'm going to say I'm fan here, our reaction to her. And I think they tried to turn her into something she wasn't. They made her some kind of quasi-combination of Stone Cold Steve Austin and Conor McGregor. And that it was nonsense. That's not who she is. And for those of you
that's who no one is.
Yeah,
that would be impossible for anyone to get over.
I will say for those of you whose first, introduction to her was the Nia Jax, and this is going to be, I'm going out on a limb here. I think Nia Jax was irresponsible, and I want to use the word sloppy. It was more than just a punch. She broke a bone in her face.
Yeah.
But beyond that, I would encourage you to watch. During NXT, where I got to introduce to Becky Lynch was in NXT. And where Becky Lynch got over with me, so to speak, was in a match she had with Sasha Banks there. It was a submissions match. And I think it was I'm going to be dangerous here. It was NXT TakeOver Unstoppable, I believe. Unstoppable or Unbreakable. I might be confusing two pay-per-view names there. I believe it's Unstoppable. But they had a submissions match, which she ultimately lost to Sasha, and Sasha remained the champion. And they had a storyline that built up to that I enjoyed. But at the end of that match, Sasha left, to me, it seemed like the management was trying to gauge the audience's reaction to Becky Lynch. I believe this was the first time she appeared with her steampunk persona, which is still my favorite. It was the first time I'd seen her in that. And at the end of the match, when Sasha left, the audience began mimicking her theme music out of appreciation for the match that she and Sasha had put on. Now, she's not the athlete that Charlotte is or any of those other people, but when I watched that match, this is someone who may not be as talented as those, but I think she wants it. And so I got behind her at that point. And so I'm not a fan of the man, but Becky Lynch, absolutely.
So, and that, I know which match you're talking about, too. So here's the thing, too, with that is the sun shines on a dog's ass every once in a while, too. You know what I mean? Like you said, she's not as good as the other girls, but she believes she is. You know, sometimes that confidence level is part of it. CM Punk had the same thing. CM Punk wasn't the greatest technical wrestler out there. You understand? He wasn't the most believable, but he walked into a room and he really believed he was the best in the world. You know what I mean? And that came across like thunder on television. You understand?
Exactly.
So same thing with Becky Lynch. Like, you know, like I said, she's not as qualified, in my opinion, as some of the others. I think she's very clunky in the ring. Like, I don't think she does things very smoothly, and I think that's part of it. But like you said, because of her confidence level, she's able to get some stuff over that shouldn't be able to get over. And I give her credit for that. But at the same time, I'm not a fan of her at all.
All right, well, we'll disagree on that, but I do notice, I believe our time is...
We still got a little bit.
Okay.
There's one more thing I really want to cover.
Oh, by all means.
So, I don't know, Mark Tipton, have you ever heard of custom matches?
Yes, I have heard of custom matches.
Okay. So I've mentioned this on different podcasts over the years, and every time I mention it, it becomes like, what? What are you talking about? I've never heard of this before. No. So basically, what custom matches are, for those of you who don't know, is men primarily order matches. There's a company, and they'll order matches of this girl versus that girl. I want her to wear this. I want her to wear that. I want this move to happen, this move to happen, that move to happen. You know, this to be the finish, blah, blah, blah. So basically, you're letting a mark, book professional wrestling. You understand? So, like, that's one problem. The other problem becomes basically jack-off material for most guys, and that's the reason that they're doing it. So to me, it's like we talked about, moving more towards that fetish realm. And let me say this, it's very good money for these for these girls that do it. They'll do tapings, and they'll do 10, 12, 13 matches, and you can only imagine how much this money these guys paying for these matches that turn around and get split between the girls and the promotion and stuff like that. It's a lot of money. And like, I've heard the numbers before, and it's pretty impressive, but at the same time, to me, it diminishes everybody. It diminishes the sport of professional wrestling. It diminishes the girls that do it, and I know I have a lot of of girls out there that I know and respect that have done it, but I personally don't agree with it.
Okay, yes. It's not something I was eager to talk about, but because to me, with all due respect to everyone, I don't consider it pro wrestling. I have mentioned that we often see trends and things in our culture reflected in wrestling. And when those sorts of things, to me, it's along the lines of the OnlyFans and the girls on Twitch, those sorts of things.
Private Snapchats.
Exactly, those sorts of things. I put it more along that's being reflected in a wrestling format. But to me, it's not professional wrestling. It's something separate.
Yeah, and that's kind of my thought process too, as far as if two girls, if we'll go back to Sherry Martel and Rockin' Robin have a match, and some guy gets aroused by it and jacks off, but it's a wrestling match, that's on him, right? But if you're creating something with the sole purpose, this is going to happen, you understand? Like, then that becomes pornography, and it becomes fetish stuff. And like, to me, that is if you're going to do that, then go do that. Go do porn. Go do fetish. I don't have any, to each their own, that kind of thing. I wouldn't want my daughter to do it, but to each their own, you know what I mean? But if you're going to be a professional wrestler, then let's stay on this side of the fence. You understand? Let's stay where professional wrestling lives. You know what I mean? We got enough trouble as it is without something like that.
All right. And it is something that I do understand has been dealt with in this subject, but I will also want to put in a plug that I have seen AEW put on some matches, the Thunder Rosa, and I've seen Serena Deeb involved in matches that I thought were pretty good wrestling matches, and I want to say that is an aspect of wrestling that I certainly
endorse. I mean, like I said, there's plenty of girls out there that are really talented. It's just the majority of them aren't. And we give too many passes to the girls that aren't. Like, if they throw a bad form or if they throw a bad kick, we don't criticize them like we would another male wrestler. We just kind of they're females,
All right. Could I devil's advocate here
Sure.
a little bit? We mentioned how there are fewer women involved, and specifically top level in ring performers. It's often said that iron sharpens iron, so to speak. Excuse me.
Right.
So with the limited chances they have to work with women that are better than they are in the business, that there's limited opportunities for them to improve themselves. Is that fair?
Yes, but at the same time, it's really like, even if you broke it down into percentages, like the percentage of great male wrestlers, versus the percentage of female wrestlers depend on their entire population. Like, I think the female percentage would be extremely lower than the male one. Because I know a lot of guys that are just amazing professional wrestlers. Maybe they've never got a shot nationally, but they're there. You know what I mean? They can do it. And I've known some girls too that are like Miss Natural and Stacey O'Brien and Miranda Gordy, and there's lots of girls out there that I enjoy and I like and I'm friends with. Rebecca Reyes is another one that was around for a while, but like those girls, I have a connection with them and they're just like one of the boys. You know what I mean? But it becomes kind of few and far between.
All right.
Yeah, we're
way over.
Man, we're fixing to hit 40 minutes.
Oh, okay.
For the first time ever, but. This was obviously a big subject, and we had a lot to talk about. But I am the Golden Boy, Greg Anthony, and for my co-host, the birthday boy, Mark Tipton, thank you and goodbye.